So our personal incubation is complete. We've launched Water Demand, Water Like an Oil Well, where for the first time ever, everyday investors can earn generational royalties from private water systems. It's modeled on the oil and gas MLP space, which was launched in 1981, is today a $300 billion plus marketplace, very viable, and everyday investors can invest in it. No more massive central systems. This is the future, smaller endpoint water treatment, businesses doing their own water treatment. And by the way, saving water by reusing the water, which unfortunately the central utilities never do. And we now have initial funding in place for the first commercial pilot program. Welcome everyone. I see everybody's arriving, and we're going to go ahead and get things started right now. And Tom Liaco says, hello everyone. Water the blue gold. Thursday, June 15, 2023, briefing number 215, the world's new water network. We're talking about water on demand, of course. The usual safe harbor statements. An article came out. One of our investors sent this to us. It's not just AI. 5 trends that will change how you invest. And that came out in Barrons and was reprinted in Wall Street Journal. Let's take a look. In the future, we'll be thirsty, and artificial intelligence will do our jobs. We'll all be svelte, slim. That's cute. James Wright, hope you're all doing well. Bob, I'll get to your question in a second. All right, so with that, let's take a look at what the trends are. Medical miracles, advances in biomedical science will alleviate a lot of human suffering related to rare genetic diseases and obesity. Well, we could just have a better diet, huh? But anyway, I am not going to get into that. But I can tell you that when I went on a keto diet, I lost 10 pounds, and I wasn't fat. But I'm very happy that it worked out that way. India's rise. I did a piece in a briefing a little while ago about India, and that most of India's population, the cities have not been built for most of the population that is growing up, that is coming, right? It's like ridiculous. More than doubling of the cities, I believe. I did amazing coverage of it. I was just blown away. But they're young, and it happens to be a, it's a democratic country as democratic countries go, and it has a lot of natural resources, in some ways more than China does. Anyway, so that's an interesting angle. Scarce water. Here's where we come in. Obviously, addressing water scarcity is becoming an urgent need, not just in emerging markets, but also in developed economies. Utah's Great Salt Lake is shrinking, which it's ironic. It says it will reduce snowfall in Utah's mountains, but of course, we had an incredible year for snow. But that's the kind of stuff that happens on a very short timeline. But it's true that the drying up of the Great Salt Lake and other lakes is not a great situation. The Colorado River is in trouble. And it really affects the fate of cities like Las Vegas and Phoenix. All right, companies and people that don't adapt are at risk. Investors should think about food and beverage companies, which are relying on adequate water supplies. Agriculture is the elephant in the room, but other industries are at risk too. For example, semiconductor manufacturers use billions of gallons of water. Now, one thing, as we know, is if they would just treat their own water, then they would be able to reuse their water. They would almost double their water supply. And that is something that is, I guess, one reason why, back in the week of May 14th, we had a unicorn come along in water tech that was going after the big water users, pharma, chips, energy, various varieties of energy, alternative and regular, and food and beverage, right? These are big, big water users. And they also have an opportunity to dramatically improve their water availability by implementing their own water treatment, which is what we do. Invest in companies that are attacking the root of the problem. Yeah, baby. Now here he's just talking about ETFs. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with an ETF. Nothing wrong with water companies like Ecolab. But of course, we are the only ones that have the equivalent of an oil well master limited partnership in water that regular investors can invest in. This is what we like to say. that water is the people's asset with us anyway. All right. $1.4 trillion will be invested in the next years in infrastructure to better treat, transport, and conserve water. I think we'll pull that out and put it in a slide deck, huh? All right. And then just to finish what the list of 5 was, energy transition. I agree that the energy road to a green future will be bumpy, just how it's going to be, mainly because there's been a suppression of the nuclear energy route, which I'm not going to get on that soapbox, but nuclear energy is way behind, and it's really the only way we can really solve it fast. And then, of course, AI, going to change our lives, et cetera. I think there's a lot of hype in that. And for investors, for sure, we've seen the end of the first bubble anyway. So it's not something that we want to invest in currently. It's kind of overhyped. All right. In Florida, new incentives for recycling, incentives for the use of gray water technologies, important incentives to developers and home builders for using gray water recycling. So taking water from the buildings. Now, you have to plumb a building for what they call purple pipes. Purple pipes are the pipes that come from these non-toilet sources: bath, shower, bathroom sink, and laundry water. And so you have to basically build it into the building. So they get 25% density bonus and 35% bonus. That means they can be 35% more dense, which translates directly into profits if 100% will have a gray water system installed. So that's very promising for home developers in Florida. And of course, we have the systems. All right. Oh, and I got to do a monologue on MoneyTV. It was kind of fun. Check it out. I'm Riggs Eckleberry, standing in for Don. I'm the chairman, CEO, and co-founder of OriginClear, a long-time public company that has appeared many times on MoneyTV. And I'm here to discuss some interesting topics that are going on in the world. I don't often get to do this because I try not to be too geopolitical in my job, but because Don does go there, I'm going to go there a little bit too. This should be a lot of fun. All right. So in short, we have a couple situations in the world if we pull away and see what's happening. Number one, we have, as we know, the currency-based system fading away in favor of a commodity-based finance system. And that's because of just a tremendous amount of liquidity injected by many countries, chief of them being the US, and a flight to value, which is in income generating assets. Now, a lot of people go to gold and so forth, but it's not necessarily income generating. So that's really where things are going. And it's going to be the new power balance. That's why we see the new influence of the Brazil, Russia, India, China, et cetera, plus, start to grow because these are commodity-rich countries. Okay, so that's the first point that is very, very important, is the growth of investable assets. And the second big trend that's occurring is one that was first brought to my attention by Peter Zeihan, who's a super smart guy. He talks about 250 days out of the year to people like the Naval College and so forth. So this guy is super smart, but let's not forget that he is part of. He's not a neocon. You might call him a realist in Washington, but he's definitely has a Washington orientation. Nonetheless, he has spotlighted a trend, which is de-globalization. De-globalization is happening at a rapid rate. Already, manufacturing is moving back to North America, places like South Texas, northern Mexico. I'm hearing about a tremendous amount of overemployment south of the border, and Tijuana has 1 million square feet of unmet real estate requirements, manufacturing facility requirements, wholesale distribution requirements, et cetera. So the boom is on. And he predicts, and I agree, that after a period of settling down with all this stupid inflation and so forth, we're going to settle into a 20 to 25 year world-class boom for North America. And what will be built will be these super automated AI factories, state-of-the-art, that will make it possible to run manufacturing in North America. as opposed to China, et cetera, because there'll be less and less labor involved. Now, here's the thing where my company comes in, because OriginClear, we're a public company in the water space, and we've been looking at trends. And one of the big trends that we've been signaling since 2016 has been that water treatment, not water supply, but water treatment, is being devolved or decentralized to the industry and agriculture itself. So companies are doing their own water treatment. In fact, recently, a very promising startup achieved unicorn status that is literally going after the big users. But I won't get into that. The point I'm making is, with decentralized water, that's the only way you can go if you have a manufacturing boom. Think about it. How are you going to build big central utilities to keep up with a rapid boom like that? It's not going to happen. Already in North Texas, there's a land boom, and we are supplying, with our subsidiary Modular Water Systems, housing developments that are completely independent of sewage. That's going to happen also with manufacturing. So my second big prediction is that you're going to have these drop-in-place factories, fully modular, with modular water treatment fully integrated into it, and all of it being delivered as much as possible as a service without a lot of, for example, the water will be metered just like you would get it from the city. So that's a huge trend, and it tells to me that no matter what happens in Washington, with whatever party is in power, the macro trend is toward a vast amount of prosperity, because North America is capable of being totally self-sufficient for resources in a way that other regions of the world are not. So with that optimistic, yet hopefully realistic view, I'm Rick Zackelberry. Join me for my weekly CEO briefing every Thursday night. And if you can't make it, there's a replay in the morning. Just go to oc.gold/CEO, oc.gold/CEO. Just go to originclear.com, click on the briefing, and you'll be able to talk to me via comments, and I air those comments in the briefing. It's wide open. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you, and enjoy the show. That was fun. So that was a guest monologue I did on MoneyTV. Don Belargian has had this, he's done thousands of these by now. And every time he has a monologue where he basically rants, he is not a leftist, let's put it that way. But it was fun to stand in for him and do this little monologue. As you can see, we are really pushing or identifying these major macro trends that are causing water tech to be very detached, or self-sufficient water treatment to be so important as a water tech, right? So that is that part, and very happy to do that. And Bob Roos said, are you going to talk about the funding for the first commercial pilot? Well, Ken did a major job of raising initial funds, and those funds, pending deployment in a first pilot, are earning interest. The investors involved are happily receiving interest, or not profit shares really, every quarter. But more important, what about the pilot itself? And that is where we realized that the way we were going about it, going to our customers who were about to go to contract, well, they had already figured out the capital requirements. And so this is a major reason why we integrated modular water into Water on Demand, because Dan early said, listen, it's best done by me talking to the consulting engineer at the beginning of the process to give him a shot at a service-based contract, because that's when you're still trying to solve the money problems. There's going to be an interview on this show in a few minutes where a particular representative of a major engineering firm that represents us talks about this. We'll get into that. So yes, the funding's there, and we believe we've debugged it by figuring out how to go early on. And that's where we stand right now. All right. So I'm going to jump into the next. This is Ken Berenger at the NASDAQ MarketSite. Let's take a look.
OriginClear is transforming the water industry with revolutionary water treatment technology and innovative financing. With me is Executive Vice President Ken Berenger to explain the company. And recently, the water industry achieved a status of unicorn. There have been some companies in this industry who have been unicorns, which is a private company worth $1 billion. So tell me about that, and what does that mean for the whole industry?
Hi, Jane. Thanks for having me back.
Great to have you.
Hello. Yeah, it's very validating. I've only been screaming about this for 5 years. Welcome to the party. Where you been? In actuality, that unicorn was created through private venture capital. So the difference is, I think the street's waking up to the fact that this is a massive underserved business, and it's nothing more enduring. Technology can change day to day, but water is enduring. It will, it's not going to go out of style, I suspect, anytime soon. It was incubated by venture capital. There was no individual investor access. So if you and I said, look, I love this idea, I want to be involved, we're boxed out. OriginClear, what we're doing is the exact opposite. We recognize that in a $1 trillion space, you're probably going to have more than one unicorn. This is a unicorn creating space. We want to develop the next one, hopefully, but focus exclusively on individual investors to provide kind of what I would call mainstream investors or accredited investors with the same access to the same opportunity and structure it in a way that creates generational wealth.
Yeah. Now, and I did read that the world's first trillionaire will be from the water industry. So how will that happen? Is there a way that OriginClear can benefit from that?
Yes and yes. So again, I think every time I've spoken to you, I keep mentioning it's $1 trillion opportunity, and people are like, yeah, it's water. But really, I think the way to phrase this is this. Yes, it's been $1 trillion opportunity all along, and I believe that the quote came from Forbes Council. So you have to ask yourself, okay, a trillionaire can be created. That's going to be an early player for sure. I don't think you can be a late stage investor in something and create $1 trillion of wealth. But let's focus on the fact that it now is quoted by Forbes Council as it's going to have the ability to create $1 trillion plus of wealth. Now, that's either going to be one individual, but what's the real benefit to that? What we believe is by focusing on the individual investor, we believe that there's a lot more impact and a lot more benefit of having $1 trillion wealth creation opportunity, and maybe decentralized water, decentralize the opportunity, create maybe 1 million millionaires. We think that's a lot more impactful.
Yeah, so just $1 trillion industry, and I guess that's what we've talked about so many times. And you've said before, water is the people's asset. So it's obviously something we need to survive. I mean, what do you mean by that? How could that benefit viewers?
Right. So the other part of your question was, how do we benefit? Well, big money is finally pouring into water. We're seeing Forbes Council say there's going to be a trillionaire created from it. We see now the first of many unicorns being created. Here's what's interesting about the company that just created a unicorn. It's exclusively in private water infrastructure. Okay. This is entirely what we do. Now, they're developmental stage, but they're going to do, I've often said, if you're Anheuser-Busch, if you're Pepsi, if you're Big Pharma, you don't need decentralized water pay per gallon. What you can do is basically construct a $100 million system, hire engineers round the clock, and you're not really a polluter anyway. Big businesses aren't. It's the small businesses that don't have access to that. So they're doing they're now in the developmental stage, what we've been already successfully doing for years. And I think that will be the benefit because the world is waking up to what we've been kind of that lone voice in the wilderness for a while. Now the world is going, oh yeah, water, that's huge. Well, it's nice to be right, even if you're a little late to the game. Yeah. Right. Now, to answer your question about people's assets, MLPs were an instrument that was created 40 years ago, and it kind of catered to creating generational wealth for the affluent, accredited investors. It's been magnificent at doing that. It's got tax benefits. It's got income that protects against inflation. That came along when big oil was already a century old, okay? Water, again, the people's asset. If you're going directly to venture capital firms, if you're going directly to hedge funds, it's not going to be the people's asset. It's going to be VC's asset. It's going to be hedge fund asset. We're focusing entirely on creating decentralized water systems. Each one will operate like an oil well for water. Okay? And by focusing on individual investors, we believe we can deliver that wealth creation opportunity, and again, decentralize it among millions of individuals, create the same wealth creation opportunity, but in a way that we think is, well, I hate to use democratic, but it is. It's a little bit more decentralized than democratic.
Yeah, well, and it definitely is an industry that seems like it's in need of disruption. So
for sure. Here's what I think you're going to find now that it's being vocalized by someone outside of our kind of where we came from. Water is a highly technical business. It is very technologically advanced. I don't know if you know this, but there's an absolute land boom going on right now in the United States. So I have some wonderful video I'd like to share with you about a couple of our technology wins where we've gotten some installations. One of them is in Denison, Texas, just north of the Dallas area. But from Dallas up to the Oklahoma border, there's a corridor. There's an absolute land boom explosion. Thousands of manufacturers are going to be popping up, we think, over the course of the next 10 to 20, even 25 years. Now, manufacturers can't operate where there is no infrastructure. By doing what we do, by dropping these in like the Denison, Texas location, we can create a decentralized private water infrastructure system faster than they can even put up the building. You're going to see thousands of manufacturers come back from China, land in the United States, and by doing this, we can help facilitate an American manufacturing renaissance. And that's really exciting because not only because of the capital it creates, the jobs it creates, and of course the wealth.
Yeah.
And to be the focal point of that or to help facilitate that is really an exciting prospect.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting because these companies need water and they may have to wait for years for some municipality to install a...
Think about it, right? Think about it. So we're going to build a manufacturing plant as soon as they build 100 miles of pipe.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen, right? We could literally build them as fast as the building, which I think is super exciting.
Okay, so last question, Ken, just about your customers and what you have so far. How have they been? They've been happy with the service? What kind of experience have they had?
I'm so glad you mentioned that. Okay, when a 30-year veteran engineer says, "Holy cow, guys, you've blown me away. You just handed me the easy button."
Honestly, I was amazed. I was really looking for the easy button so that we can focus on doing what we do best.
You get that guy on recording saying, "Can you say that again, please?" So we've got a number of installations. North Texas, in my own area in Moscow, PA, they're putting in systems that are just changing the way people can develop property, both for the industrial and residential. Now, this is still an industrial-focused application, but I believe it'll kind of expand out into the residential home development market. When people have gotten used to having a certain way of operating and they think that's their only option, and you get the brilliance of a Dan Early coming along with a decentralized system saying, "Here you go, you're in business." And when they're impressed with that, you know you've gotten kind of the right, you've captured the right tone.
Okay, thank you so much, Ken.
Thank you.
Yep.
Nice work, Ken. After I saw that, I said, Ken is presidential. That's what I said. And I'm standing by it, okay? So with that, we are moving on to an amazing interview that we had with an engineer who's been involved. Well, you'll hear about it. It's an amazing story. We have not been able to tell it until now. I went on a campaign like, we have the best kept secret in any industry. Let's change that. And so here we go. Let's listen to what goes down here with engineer Patrick Spencer. Patrick Spencer, thank you for joining us on this conversation. Modular Water Systems, of course, is a offspring of OriginClear, and it's been developing now for about 5 years. And during those 5 years, you have been involved until recently in helping to build water treatment systems for embassies all over the world, and Modular Water Systems was part of that. Tell me about your experience with Modular Water Systems and the players.
Modular Water Systems was really important for the deployment worldwide of modular water treatment solutions for a number of reasons. We were working on projects that were all the way at initial concept of design, all the way through final commissioning and startup and maintenance of existing plants. Modular Water Systems, Dan Early and Rob Litos were amazing in understanding the need of the client, depending on each one of those project phases, and being able to provide value from a decentralized water product regardless of the location, the conditions, and the parameters that were needed.
So you're telling me that U.S. embassies typically have to be independent of sewage systems?
They do. A lot of times, because of the particular location that they are in and the load that they would otherwise put in onto a municipal system, they tend to be one of the larger complexes around in these urban settings. And so sometimes there are centralized municipal plants, and in other instances, there are not. And in both of those circumstances, there had to be at the very least, a pre-treatment of wastewater and stormwater as well that had to, before it could either be accepted into the municipal supply or could otherwise be recycled for irrigation said needs on those embassies.
So recycling was a part of the plan in all these cases.
100%. 100%. Yeah. And Dan and Rob were instrumental in making sure that we had a EPA designated effluent that met the highest quality standards, all by code, U.S.-based codes, that made sure that we were getting what they would call Class A wastewater effluent that we could then otherwise turn around and use in gray water systems or use in irrigation, both interior and exterior applications, which was amazing.
Sure, of course. Anything short of potable.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So they were they were instrumental in making sure that we had the right equipment in the right place in the right order. And what was great about modular was, just as the name implies, each one of the situations, whether we were in Thailand or we were in Djibouti, Mauritania, each one of those locations had a set of geometric just constraints. What I'm talking about is programmatic constraints. Was the system to be installed subsurface? Was it to be installed in a basement of a building? Was it to be a standalone? Where we'd have to take these treatment systems as we think about the train, if you would, the treatment train, and where we're going to have to deploy them across different spots on the campus, as we affectionately call the embassies, or where we're going to have more of a central location where we could complete all of that treatment in one spot. So that it varied. And so that has a whole set of new pumping requirements, storage requirements, treatment requirements, censoring, centralized command of the control system versus having to have, say, 2 or 3 separate controllers, integration back to building automation that had to be taken out. And to be able to pull all those together and make it such that the delivery and the design were both simple yet sophisticated. What I've seen in other instances with other providers is that they tend to try to master complexity. What I mean by that is they try to put every bell and whistle into the system, into design for every edge case scenario. Dan and Rob and the team at Modular were instrumental in understanding what was required, what could be the most simply yet sophisticatedly delivered solution that would be reliable. And you could also train on all of the local operators. So that's an important component that Modular Water was really good and remains really at the forefront of, is understanding the operability of these decentralized plants. And that while there is a support back at the home base for engineering needs and maintenance and operations needs as they come up, day in and day out, Modular Water's wastewater treatment and solutions were, from an operations standpoint, the most intuitive and simple to operate.
Right. So you don't have to have a water expert to run it in Djibouti. And you
That's
also
right.
Have a kind of a set it and forget it mentality, which is great. The patents that originally and still differentiate Modular Water, of course, is the envelope, the high-density polyurethane or polyethylene encasings, which are not always used. If it's an interior setup, you don't necessarily have to use it. But it seems like it's more than that. It's a whole design philosophy that takes into account decentralization, meaning the janitor or facilities manager is on his own, and help is not going to come soon on a C-47 or whatever. So with that in mind, it's got to kind of operate. And that I think has tremendous implications for the whole decentralization movement as it becomes a real thing, right?
That's right. You need to make sure that if you're going to deploy these, that you consider the local resources that are available, and that you adapt a design and a treatment train so that you can ensure through a series of both steps and articulation of the process, walking them through the process while you're doing these deployments. You talk about the HDPE, the high density polyethylene deployments. What was really nice with some of those deployments that we did was that we were able to take and deploy treatment systems in and around existing treatment plants, so that way we could actually commission and start up a new plant, and they were not necessarily down and without any sort of decentralized treatment. So because of the modularity of where we could deploy these things, we were able to then set them and get them in place, and then bring operators and make it such that the new plant looked a lot like the old plant. And that familiarity with the operators was really important, particularly when we were in Southeast Asia. There was a very limited amount of space for us to put in a new water treatment solution. So what we ended up doing was putting it side by side on the existing, again, with those updates in technologies, those updates in the approach. But there was also this ability in part because of the HDPE and how light it is and how easy it is in order to install, particularly from a prefabrication standpoint, that ramp up, if you would, in terms of training and understanding of your local operators was so much faster.
Yes, we've seen elsewhere that literally, all the recipient has to do is set up a pad and, water, electricity hookups, and the semi comes in, drops it in, and 6 hours later, after the membrane bioreactor is primed, it's up and running. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. That we saw that a number of times, and that was amazing to be able to do just what you said, which is to be able to start that thing up in a matter of 6 hours was incredible, and a real testament to the design and the engineering that Modular Water puts into their products.
Yeah. So all the sophistication occurs at design stage so that you don't have to have it on site, basically.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
There's fascinating because the embassies are kind of a leading edge of this. Just like, for example, remote deployments of the military in places that used to be in, like Afghanistan. These are all, detached implementations, but there's a wider context starting to develop. I know that you are yourself fascinated by the possibilities of dealing with all of the rest stops and RV camps all over the country, as a personal interest of yours, but also we're seeing a global move towards de-globalization, which is repatriating a whole lot of factories to North America, Canada, US, Mexico. And it's already happening so fast. I'm hearing, for example, that employment is at a premium in the border towns of Mexico, that Tijuana has got 1 million square feet of unavailable real estate that needs to be filled, and it's going to grow more and more. And obviously the build out of central water systems is not going to follow. So every one of these factories, A, is going to be state of the art robotics, AI, and so forth, and B, is going to have integrated water treatment systems. And I think that's going to be a fascinating next decade as we move into that.
I agree with you 100%. I think that as we continue to see this build out, this kind of reimagination of domestic sourcing, domestic manufacturing, it's something that I have a lot of experience with. I have manufacturing plants in Minnesota, in Kansas City, in Colorado, and soon to be in South Texas. All of these are going to require, to some extent, a process treatment of our effluent on these manufacturing processes. This is something that is going to be, to your point, consistent in my estimation over the next 20 to 25 years as these plants get turned on, whether it's in Alabama or it is in Alaska or is in Tijuana. I think that this is something that's going to continue to be a need. So to be able to take and have a pre-engineered, prefabricated solution that can handle anywhere from 2,000 gallons per day up to 50,000 gallons per day. And to be able to say that design is scalable. That implementation is scalable and growable. That future proofing of these decentralized plants is going to be critical, such that you're not only designing for what is happening today, but what is going to happen in 5 and 10 years, and allow for that natural growth without having to completely upend your infrastructure as that growth occurs. That's critically important. So what I see Modular Water doing in the way that they've deployed their solutions and is taking that sophistication that you talk about at the front end on the design and looking at, again, how do we future-proof and grow the modular water systems over the next 20 years.
So yeah, you're talking about scalability, right? In other words, you can just gang up these systems. Of course, they max out at a certain size, and then you can start, running them in parallel, and that is unlimited, really. Which we're not trying to be a central utility. We're right. Providing remote services, but by the nature of the design, it has this ability to start with a co-located unit at a factory, and as the factory grows, then we simply add on to it. That's fascinating. And what I love is Dan Early's Henry Ford mentality of like, hey, you got three or four form factors, and that's it. Choose any color as long as it's black, right? And I think that's smart because we have another division that has amazing customers, but every single one of them is custom, and it's so hard to scale up, right? So modular, I think, is dealing with a totally different customer type, which is tends to be on the smaller side, but could easily explode as it grows its business. And so I think it's a fascinating direction. It's an amazing time to be in decentralized water.
I agree. I think that if there is going to be a need over the next 20 years of dozen types like modular water, I just don't know who is going to run the business as well as Dan Early has run it thus far. In that the application, the design, all the way through to the deployment and the commissioning, to have that intimacy of knowledge and experience. These are the things that new players into this space are going to have to be really cognizant of and really careful about, is that when you walk through this, there is an art and a science combined to how you execute on the deployment of a decentralized water treatment system. There has to be design parameters up front, but there also has to be a knowledge of what are the conditions for that plant or for that lift station at a Love's or a gas station or one of the others, to be able to show that you've executed all the way from initial concept through maintenance, including preventative maintenance and continuous monitoring, which modular is doing. And have a depth of knowledge across all of that is really going to be that thing that sets you apart over 5 to 10 years as we get kind of saturated with new players into this market. Wow, it's really so exciting. You may or may not know that Modular Water recently became a division of our new water on demand startup, which is water as a service, right? And so therefore, taking away the capital issue for customers. And at that point, it's just sign a service contract, 15-year service contract, and you're up and running. Customer loves the fact that it's fully supported, and of course that the water rates will go up on a contractual index basis, as opposed to the random situation we have today with sewage rates going helter skelter. I was very familiar with sewer rates going sky high in Jefferson County. Precisely, and so water demand can control sewage rates because, of course, we're doing the sewage, and as a result, we can offer the customer indexed inflation, within CPI that we can sustain and they can predict. That's vital, of course, and of course they can do the recycling and everything. But what is critical to make it work, we wouldn't be able to survive this water as a service concept if we didn't have this plug and play type construction, so that these things would be largely, maintainable by low level or standardly trained facilities managers, and would only require occasional, filter maintenance and so forth.
Because when you think about it, when we're starting to run the entire network of all these systems, and it's our machines are on site, and we have, provided a certain service level agreement type performance, and we don't get paid if we don't meet it. It makes it mission critical for it to be robust and standalone like that. So that's why we felt we had to bring Modular Water Systems into that environment and make it and power it, because I don't think design, build, own, operate, DBOO works unless the built system is able to run like that.
Agreed, 100%. I think the BDOO system is fully reliant on the robustness of the deployment, which is why it's really encouraging to see Modular Water take an approach with new materials that have been time tested in a number of applications like high density polyethylene, and say, I believe that we can get away from having to produce infrastructure like concrete tanks and, gosh forbid, steel tanks, right, that need to withstand that test of time of 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And to have that operation know that it's going to be reliable over that period of time is critical to execute in a manner, in a business manner in which you say water on demand is going to work off.
Well, I think it's so exciting. Patrick, I really appreciate the hard work you've done with us over the months and years with the embassies. I'm looking forward to our collaboration in the future. I really appreciate you giving us a unique point of view, because it helps everyone, Dan's team, plus the public, plus the investors who are now investing in water on demand, water equipment, funds, and so forth, to understand how this is working and where decentralization is going, which, who knew that we'd be, stepping into a potential high-tech type boom, right? Who knew? Right. But it's happening.
It is. It's been a great ride so far, and cannot wait to continue the relationship with Dan and Modular Water.
Patrick, thank you so much. I agree, and let's work together. Have a great rest of week, and again, I appreciate your help.
Thank you, sir. Have a great rest of your day.
Now, was that halfway decent or what? I mean, boom, there was so...
Holy moly. This is my first time seeing that, and I was blowing you up on the phone like, holy cow.
Well, you're up to the freewheeling discussion. No, but, every single thing that we have said, you validated and went beyond. So Bob Roos says, one of the best briefings to date. Great for getting our secret out. Yes, yes. Brian Hallinan, bravo. Sky Logan from Philanthro Investors, such a great video. I mean, and there's more coming. I mean, these testimonials that we're booking are, such a revelation, because engineers are like, wow, we got to do the next job. I'm like, no, can we please get somebody's testimonial? So anyway, Daryl Polson says, very good discussion. So we'll be obviously cutting those up into shorts and using them and so forth. But, and the fact, it's been such a well-kept secret that we do all these embassies all over the world, and they're all code named, right? It's kind of fun that way.
He was so excited. He was just like, "Yeah, I'll give you the names." I was just like, it reminds me of that old Happy Days thing when the Fonz had to go. He says, "I'll just give you a pill." The doctor was just so excited with the snapping of the fingers thing. He was, "I'll just give you a pill." He was genuinely, I mean, he's a super fan. Now, to have an engineer who really had no skin in the game,
right,
become a super fan is super powerful. Really, really, really good stuff.
You did a great job on that New to the Street, because it was less about company news than really about our overall strategy and trends and so forth, right?
High view. At the same time, a brand new investor, Holkara, who is also a financial planner, right, sent us that email. Hey, did you see this Wall Street Journal article?
Right.
You and I couldn't find it because it was originally published on Barrons, right? But it's astonishing that in the last 30 days, Riggs, the entire world has started jumping up and down and validating everything that we have said for the past 5 years. I joked in my interview with Jane, where you been? Thanks, welcome to the party. But you had a water a water unicorn created who has nothing to do with municipal systems, nothing, right? Addressing the massive water use done in semiconductors, food and beverage, and industry. Okay, that happened. We recently, and then we got wind of Jane. I clarified in James' interview, and Jane said that the water industry will produce the world's first trillionaire. It was not the quote. The quote was, the world's first trillionaire will be an investor in water, which to me is, if you're Elon Musk, yeah, you could become a trillionaire in EV. But what investor could be a trillionaire in EV? Probably none, right? But an actual investor in, in this space. I think that the thing that you pointed to in the article was that $1.4 trillion will be invested in water infrastructure in the next 10 years. Well, if there's a decent ROI on that, then certainly a major early player in that space could certainly become a trillionaire, which I think benefits. And this is just me. You and I have talked about this. I'm as much of a capitalist as anybody, but having one, trillionaire, Dr. Evil, right? That doesn't really. It's just $1 trillion. You don't need that. Creating tens or hundreds of thousands of multi-millionaires. The impact that has on our society, on our economy, on it's just so much more powerful and beneficial. And I think focusing on the individual investor and encouraging an early adoption of not only what look, I don't think Mr. Spencer could have put it any better, in engineer speak. But what I loved about Mr. Spencer's, and I think it's Patrick is his first name. Okay, Patrick's turn of phrases it was not engineer speak. There was a lot of engineer speak in there, of course. He's highly intelligent, but he was speaking broad business. He wasn't even speaking water. He was speaking in the facilitation of having these businesses be able to, basically, he took a more engineered centered viewpoint of what I mentioned, how tens of thousands of he was talking about manufacturers in Minnesota and I think he said Missouri, couple of other locations, how these modular designs could basically, facilitate these things popping up everywhere. I actually kind of took part of his quote. He basically said that we're kind of the cross between science meeting art, which I thought was very, very powerful. But some really, really wonderful quotes here. Entirely operable, I think you said, by a minimally or non-trained facilities manager, right? Remember when we said that, you can't have a water expert monitoring the thing, right? You can't do that, right? A small business can't do that. This can be operated by, a 25-year-old person with just basic facilities training, This really is the nexus. This is what allows for that massive influx of manufacturing locations to hit America and be able to be operable as quickly as the building can be built. Because
that's what it's all about. Because we are going to have this acceleration, this huge boom. While we still have our audience, I wanted to share a screen, and these are the airings, new to the street airings in June. Yeah. So here's what's interesting is that Bloomberg last week of June, last week of every month is at a good time. I don't know if you noticed that normally it's at 9:30 p.m.
Pacific, right? Like middle of the night, right? Yeah.
But the last week of each month, it's at a good time, 6:30 p.m. EST, which is prime time, right?
Sure, that's a really good.
That's beautiful slot. So these are the dates.
And the new to the street folks have been terrific in trying to get us a lot of really get us out there, which I applaud them.
Love it. Anyway, so in fact, July 29th, again, Bloomberg,
Yeah.
6:30 p.m. EST. So that's a prime.
5 days apart from each other. So the 24th is a Saturday. the 29th is a Thursday.
So that's July 29th.
Oh, it was July. I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, it's the end of the next month.
Okay.
So, because Bloomberg is the last week of the month, has a special early hour.
Yeah, you're right. Okay. June 20th.
But for example, Fox Business is a Monday. With that, let me see. Daryl Polson, what have you been your discussions based on UN Sustainability Development Goals in water? Well, here's the issue is that I have found whenever I've gotten into high-level political things, it has distracted the company no end. So it's basically we like applaud. We think it's wonderful, but it's really driven by the company's need. And so we're literally harvesting low-hanging fruit because what's happening is these are all the early. In fact, I will have a whole other testimony where I talk about, how it's the whole life cycle of a product, a high-tech product, but any product these days starts with the early adopters, gets into the strategic buyers, and then eventually it jumps what's called the chasm into the tornado and everybody adopts it. Well, we are now at the strategic buyer phase. And so these are the most aggressive and they are already factoring in sustainable development and so forth.
Right. I think it's important to stress that, Riggs, when you start to go down you go down that rabbit hole and you start bringing in UN, the UN will implement what they implement regionally wherever they implement it. And then companies will adhere to whatever either local standards or whatever sort of higher standards they want to adhere to. And that's based on what's good for the company, good for their PR, good for their image, or just, good for being, doing a good turn to the planet. But the important part is this is going to happen without those CAFE standards or not, if that's what you want to refer to them, right? This will enable entire regions to be developed very, very rapidly. And now that engineers, look, seeing outside, we've been singing the praises of this forever. To hear an outside party rant about this it was an eye opener for me.
You felt validated. It's like when
welcome to the party, right?
You're telling the beautiful model how beautiful you are, and then she agrees.
I'm telling her how beautiful I am. I got it. Okay.
Also, Daryl says, how will AI influence operations? Well, we have plans for building that. As Daryl, we announced plans and memorandum of understanding to acquire a software company that's in the what's called middleware space. That's the connection between the actual ground, the client down the ground, and the server. I'm not going to get into high-tech stuff at this late date, but nonetheless, it's in our plan. AI is going to be in everybody's plan. All right, and here we go. Getting to the
I got it.
Okay, David. He says we like getting the engineering companies is where we need to focus marketing efforts. Back 2019. We spent a lot of energy signing up manufacturer sales reps. I think we got a dozen signed up. Now, out of them, it netted out to about 3 or 4 that were really productive. And Patrick was with one of the ones that were hyper productive. So that 2019 initiative really paid off. I remember Bill Charneski was working on it at the time. And so, yes. Now, the other thing that we do with engineers is that Dan Early does webinars for engineers. They're highly technical. I'm going to make him record one of those things because they're so exciting for engineers. But he does a wonderful guru thing. So he goes after the engineers with his webinars. We have the relationships with the manufacturing sales reps who, once they figure out they can get deals done fast and well, they bring us more.
Look, this is where I don't want to make an inappropriate comparison, but the absolute explosion that happened in real estate financing happened when it came up with the no money down and even low credit scores applied. Think about that, right? All of a sudden, everyone had a house. Right?
Okay, but I want to point out that the boom we're having that's not even yet doing that.
I know.
And here, okay, I'm going to do a whole briefing on the whole tornado model because the strategic buyers are buying, they don't care. They'll spend the capital. But for it to go into the tornado of adoption, that's where we need the financing. Okay, well, listen, we've kept our wonderful people long enough. Thank you all for being on board. It's been,
Let's give them the link.
and there's gonna be more testimonials. They're amazing, and I enjoy them tremendously. So you're going to see more of that. Ken, thank you very much. Thank you to all our listeners. OC.Scroll/Ken to book with Ken, or invest at OriginClear.com. And remember to fill out your Zoom survey because it gives us vital information. All right, so there we are. Do talk to Ken because he's got some.
Wait, Don just sent me a message, so I don't know. But Don, go to oc.gold/Ken. Get on the phone. Get on with my staff, and he'll walk you through where he'll get you to the appropriate person. All right, so jot down that link, please, sir.
Don, your timing is impeccable. Impeccable. All right. Well, thank you all again and have a great night. It's been a wonderful briefing. I'll see you next week. It's going to be even better. I'll tell you.
Good night.
Have a good night.